Good morning, New Hope. So glad you decided to join us today. It is Thanksgiving week. Who's excited? All right. Who likes turkey? Raise your hand. All right. Who likes ham? Let's battle it out right here, right now. It's half and half. I love it. Well, this is the week of Thanksgiving, and I know oftentimes as we step into the week of Thanksgiving, we are reminded of those things to be thankful for. Yes, church? Constantly reminded of the things to be thankful for, everything in our life, what we have. But it's interesting, it's like, why do we always just wait till this week to be thankful at times? This is something we should be reminded of constantly. But I want to think through this idea of, instead of thinking through it, because we understand that even though we're in a week of thankfulness, the struggle is still real. Anyone with me? Come on, raise your hand. Anyone with me? You're something going on, there's a struggle happening. And what do we do with that? Are we constantly thinking through it, constantly thinking about those things, or are we going to be thanking through it? The idea of the power of gratitude, that when we have a gratitude heart, if you've been here before, you've heard me say it, we wanted to have a gratitude attitude, right? That's the way we're supposed to be, is having gratitude in all that the Lord has done and in every area of our life. But at times there are seasons that are tough, they're hard. And so what do we do in those seasons? Do we have a heart of thankfulness in and through it? Or do we just throw the towel in and say, forget it? And as we step into this text this morning, we're going to be in Philippians chapter 4, looking at a story that's taking place, but just the heartbeat of Paul as he's speaking about this idea. The idea of rejoicing, the idea of thankfulness. What do we do even in the midst of those things? One other thing that we deal with, I think, this week is a lot of times when we have the holidays, there's family that comes in. We see people we haven't seen in a while. And can we just be honest this morning? How many, have a struggle with maybe a family member in the house or somebody in the family, right? And it's hard. I mean, we're just being honest. When you gather together because something probably took place or there was a difficult moment, and so it's hard to see that person. It's hard to enjoy that time when you know maybe they've done something or maybe you've wronged them and you guys haven't hashed that out yet. And so for some people, holidays are amazing, and for others, holidays are actually difficult. They're hard. And that's just reality. Well, I want to take a look at this text this morning and really talk through this of not only how do we deal with those situations, but how do we continuously have a heart of thankfulness and the power of gratitude, and first and foremost, thanking Jesus for every single thing that he's done for our lives. In Philippians chapter 4, we're going to dive in and see again, and starting in verse 1, he says this, "Therefore, my beloved and longed for brethren, my joy and crown. So stand fast in the Lord, beloved." Then verse 2, he brings up two people. He says, "I implore you, Euodia, I implore you, Syntyche, to be of the same mind in the Lord, and I urge you also, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life." And this is what I love about Paul really quickly as he's diving into this. It's interesting that even thousands of years ago, there's these two people that are having a conflict. Isn't that interesting? It's the same thing today. There's always going to be some type of conflict, and there might be conflict in the family. There might be conflict with even someone at church, right? This happens. Can we be honest, church? Yes? Someone says something to you, you're hurt, right? We have no idea the situation that's taking place between these two, but clearly it's a big enough deal where Paul's writing about it. And he's telling the church of Philippi, hey, I'm imploring these two to be of the same mind, to work this thing out. And I find it interesting because, again, this is thousands of years ago, but the same thing happens today. Where someone says something that is hurtful, where someone does something that is hurtful, and then it causes all kinds of turmoil. There was turmoil then at times in relationships, and there's turmoil today at times of relationships. And Paul speaks about it. But it's interesting where he's going to take us here in a second of what we do in the midst of these things. Because when there's moments of this, it's kind of stressful. You might be filled with anxiety, which he'll talk about here in just a second, because of those things that possibly have happened between two different people. And again, as you step into just this week and you see family again that maybe you haven't seen in a while, and you might be in that type of situation, what do we do about it? Do we constantly think through it of how that's going to work? Or how do we have a heart that is thinking through it? And what does that look like instead? For us, my family, most of my family's in California, so we don't get to spend a lot of the holidays with each other. My brother's going to be coming up this time for Christmas. I'm super excited, guys. I finally convinced him to move from California to here. Amen. Woo! Come on, California, let's go. I love it. But we're so excited because, we have kids, 5 kids, and they have kids, and they get to spend more time together. But we also know when that happens, there are things that take place. There's things that we rub each other wrong sometimes, and I get that. But how do we have a heart of thankfulness even in the midst of those moments? So here's what I want you to do today with me. We're going to engage a little bit this morning. I want you to take out a piece of paper if you're taking notes, or pull out your phone, pull up a note on your phone, and here's what I want you to do really quick. I want you to write down, if you can, let's be honest and open. I want you to write down 2 things that are maybe stressing you out. 2 things that are maybe difficult right now in your season today. What's 2 things? Or maybe it's only 1 thing, that's okay. What's the 1 thing that is just the 1 thing you're constantly thinking about? The 1 thing that is the most difficult thing you're dealing with? I'm going to give you a moment. Don't mind the silence. Write it down. And you probably know what that thing is the minute I brought it up. What's that 1 thing that's just causing the turmoil, the stress? Or maybe it's just a family member that you haven't seen in a while that you're going to see this Thanksgiving, and you're just worried. You're scared. You're anxious about it. Write it down. Okay, then, with that, I want you to write 3 things that you're thankful for. Write 3 things that you're thankful for. It could be small, it could be big, whatever it is, whatever comes to mind. What are the things that you're thankful for? The reason is, too, as you guys are writing, is when there's stresses of life, when there's issues with Euodia and Syntyche, and I love this too, because Paul's saying, guys, I need you to gather around them. This is what Paul's saying. They're having a moment. There's an issue. But he says, I need you to gather around them. Why? These women were with me to preach the gospel. Like, they labored with me to tell people about Jesus. So he's saying, gather around them. Come beside them. Help them work this thing out. That's what he's saying. And so I love this because sometimes it takes community. Sometimes it takes someone else to come alongside of you and you to go to them and say, hey, I need help dealing with this issue. But oftentimes when the stress is so large, we forget to be thankful for all the millions of other things that Jesus has done for us. Anyone with me? Because the stress becomes the giant. And it's so big, and it's so powerful, and it's so overwhelming that we even forget the little things to be thankful for. And so Paul, speaking here, he's like, guys, I'm imploring you, please, I urge you, true companions, help them. They labored with me. Come alongside of them. But then he points them to something else. In the midst of the stress and the difficulty, in verse 4, he says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say, rejoice. Isn't that interesting? They're having a stressful moment. It's a stressful time. There's an issue going on, and he's saying, hey, listen up. Instead of thinking about this giant, here's what I need you to do. Rejoice in Jesus alone. Again, and he says it twice. Again, I will say to you, rejoice. He's taking their eyes off the giant, the stresses, the anxiety, and saying, focus on Jesus and rejoice in him. Be thankful for every single thing he's given you. Because oftentimes, what do? Again, it's like this balance. It's like, no, there's so many stresses of life. But what about all the amazing things he's done already? Be thankful for those things. Paul's saying, change your perspective. That's what Philippians is all about, is perspective. He's saying, change the lenses. Put a different lens on. See it differently. Yes, that's stressful. Yes, there are real things we deal with in life. But in that, instead of thinking through it, thinking constantly about it, he's saying, thanking through it. Be remembered and remember all the things that Jesus has done for you. Rejoice. I don't know about you, but I don't think I can rejoice without thankfulness. I don't think I can stand up here, yeah, rejoice. You can't do that. It's like when you rejoice, there's something that takes place. You're rejoicing. You're filled with joy. You're filled with excitement. You're filled with thankfulness when you rejoice. And he says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say, rejoice. There's a song that we sing during Christmas time, right? Rejoice, rejoice. What's the next line? Amen. Come on, church, come on. Emmanuel. Amen. Rejoice. There's a reason for it. You can't sing that song and just be mad. You're excited. Rejoicing in what? In thankfulness because of what he's done. Despite the surroundings, despite the stresses, despite the difficulties, we can rejoice and be filled with thankfulness because we know what he's done for us. That's exciting. So he says, rejoice in these things. And I want to give you 3 things that I believe we should always be thankful for. Number 1 is thankful for his grace. I know, here's the thing. We all know that we have grace. We've been given the grace. We live in a grace period. It's amazing. But I think often at times, we can get caught up in just the normal day-to-day life, busy seasons, that even in those moments we forget of the grace. We forget to just say, thank you for the grace. About a month ago, I'm driving home from Draper. I'm coming around that new road that cuts across from, I-15 and cuts all the way to Redwood on the backside. And I'm right next to a police officer, and we're both making a left on Redwood. And then all of a sudden, I see him just slow down super fast and get right behind me. And I am thinking, please, Lord. And of course, all you hear is whoop, whoop. And I'm just like, oh, man. What did I do? What did I do? And of course, if anyone's like me, anxiety just fills the car, right? Raise your hand if you're like me, please. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Anxiety fills the room, right? Because you're like, I don't know what I did. Did I do something wrong? What happened? Right? So I pull over. He comes over, highway patrolman. He's like, hello, sir. Or here's the interesting thing. As he's walking, I get all my ID out. I open my glove box, and I grab my registration. And what do I see on the number? I see 7/23. And this is October 23. So I pull it out, and I'm thinking, all right, I did not realize this. Here we go. So he comes over and he says, sir, do you realize why I pulled you over? I said, absolutely, I do. It's my registration. I'm so sorry. Here's my stuff. He's like, all right, cool, yeah, thank you so much. I'll be right back. Awesome. And the minute he walks away, I'm like, Lord, okay, there's 2 ways I can think about this. Should I give him a whole sob story about my wife breaking her foot in April? She hasn't been able to drive, so I've been driving 5 kids around everywhere. I haven't checked the back of my license plate. I had no idea that this was happening. I had no idea that both my cars actually expired. I had no clue because it's just been stressful and crazy, and I'm driving 3 kids around every day, and I'm just praying she gets healed. Or do I just sit in it and realize it's my bad? So, as I'm looking in my rearview mirror, I start to see him print something out. I'm just like, oh, I'm getting a ticket. And my wife's always like, you're going to get a ticket one day. I'm getting that ticket today. He comes around the corner, he comes in, he goes, hey, sir, just wanted to let you know, actually, I'm just going to give you a warning, but this is actually a printed out warning, so it's legit. It isn't just me telling you, it's a real warning. I was like, oh my